Hi, and welcome to today's Pioneer podcast, where we welcome Maria Palmieri, an associate director with the Omlie team, and she's going to tell us about her story of getting to the Omlie house.
Yeah, totally. For anybody who's listening, Maria Palmieri, I am a Philly girl, born and raised, grew up right outside of Bucks County, went to school at Drexel, and now ultimately live in New York City, which is wild in itself. For me, when I think about what's a major milestone for me that kind of influenced what my career looks like, it's co-op. Started my first co-op at Drexel with AstraZeneca. So kind of my first step into pharmaceuticals. And that's where I met Amy, who is a director here at Omlie. I'm so thankful in meeting her. She was really passionate about mentoring me of where I was going post AstraZeneca. To that end, Amy was also really cool about helping me figure out what I wanted to do. And I remember having a conversation with her and I was like, I have no idea what I want to do. I'm interested in everything. And that's where she exposed me to Accenture and what consulting could be like. As I went through the process, I went to co-op at Accenture. And then I decided, going through that experience, I was like, consulting's for me. And I really enjoy just stepping into something that's so ambiguous and figuring it out. And to me, that's what consulting is, right?
So most people can't articulate what consulting is. So I feel like you also did that incredibly succinctly at such a young age to say, the whole thing itself is vague and challenging and troubleshooting and figuring out new things. And that's something I'm excited by.
Totally. And I also think now knowing about the disc types, thinking about this, of course, after I had this conversation with Amy, I went to every other person that I've ever talked to in my entire life. And I was like, consulting, what's that like? Yeah. And my parents had an opinion and my friends had an opinion. I went to a professor and I remember him saying, he was like, if you want the ability to try a lot of different things out in one organization, go into consulting. And he was like, you can actually figure out what you want to do. I was like, cool, sounds great.
Sign me up.
Yes, sign me up. So to answer the question in a long-winded way, ended up at Accenture. I'm so grateful for that process. I feel like a lot of team members here, and obviously there's some people on the leadership team who've worked at big consulting firms, teaches you a lot of skills, even just the learning and development that they actually invest in. But then I came to a point where I was like, I need to know my coworkers on a personal level. Mm-hmm. I felt like at Accenture, I was consistently interacting with new people, which I love, but I wanted some sort of foundation of people that I could consistently go back to. So full circle back to this story, coming back to Amy, I stalked Amy on LinkedIn so aggressively in January of 2023. And I was like, this new company looks so incredible. I was like, it's exactly what I'm doing at Accenture in some capacity, but they have everything that I did not like about a big consulting firm. You guys seem to close the gap on or addressed it in some way in just looking at your website and talking with Amy. And I went through the interview process and now I'm here and it worked out.
It's working out for all of us.
Yes. A takeaway from that too, and I tell everybody this, is stay in touch with the people you've worked with.
Mm-hmm. People like to work with people that they like.
100%.
So you've obviously learned a little bit about us through your own research and through what Amy spoke to. But as you went through the process, what was it that made you feel, because as we interview people, it's not just us interviewing them, it's them interviewing us. So when you were interviewing us, what did you feel or experience that made you ultimately make the decision to join the team?
Yeah. When I thought about Omlie and what I wanted and I went through the process, I came out of every conversation that I had with someone on this team and I was like, oh, they're human. They're not a robot and they're not just telling me what I want to hear and using jargon and showing up so inauthentic, which I felt a lot before coming to Omlie. And then the part that I also feel came out in the interview process is I was myself. I left the interview and I was like, I either got this job for sure, and it was a heck no. Because I shared things in the interview that I was like, wow, they really got to know me on a personal level for good or bad. I think about the conversation you and I had actually a lot. And I asked the question around out of the team here at Omlie, what's one characteristic that you feel like they had? And you told the birthday party story. I don't know if you want to tell that. I think it's a fantastic story.
I still tell that story because it was so impactful for me too. So when Marie had asked what is the defining characteristic of the organization, I said they're just the best group of humans I have ever had the pleasure to be with and spend time with. And every year we celebrate Phoebe Omlie's birthday, who we're inspired by our name, but also our birthday as a company as we kind of grow and continue to scale. And our second birthday party, we were at a local Philadelphia women-owned restaurant. And they knew it was our birthday. I had prepped them in advance that it would have been Phoebe's 120th and it was our second. So we had like the big number balloons and it was a big focus of the event. And as we were sitting down for dinner, the chef came out to meet us and the staff introduced themselves. And they said, oh, it's also like one of our staff members. It's his birthday today. And so, of course, we all started clapping and celebrated with him that it was his birthday, which was something I would have expected anywhere, to just like acknowledge another person in the room celebrating something. But what happened throughout the next 4 hours was every time that waiter passed someone's table, I was observing our team interacting with him, and there wasn't a single time, whether he was changing the forks or dropping a plate or picking up the dessert, that someone said, hey man, like happy birthday. It's cool, it's your birthday. And I was just like, this event is about us and our team and us celebrating who we are, but yet everybody in this room is taking a moment to celebrate someone else who we may never even see again, to make sure he's having a positive experience as well. And it just struck me because I kept observing it almost unintentionally throughout the night. And as we were settling up the tab at the end, the chef and sous chef and the whole wait staff was there as I was literally like filling out the check. I'm like, man, I hope I do this math right. And they were like, we all just wanted to stop and tell you, we have never worked with such an amazingly kind and fun team. Like, we just felt you needed to know that. And I was like, I do know that because I've been observing it all night. And it just really struck me that like that is something most people don't take the time to do. And that is the embodiment of our team.
I love that. I've never heard that story. I love that story.
I get tears in my eyes every time I think about it because it was so freaking cool that everybody was taking this moment to celebrate someone else.
A stranger.
Yeah, a stranger. It was really great. It was really great.
I've asked that question before. That's a question I've asked to many leaders. And every other person has given me a word and not given a situation to back that up. And I think that's what I think about a lot here is like, you talk the talk, you walk the walk. That's really how the leadership team comes to life here, but also like everybody that we work with, which is really cool.
It's something we're screening for, right? To make sure that that's a big part of how we're growing and scaling with people who have that same core value base. I was chatting with a potential recruit yesterday, and at the end of the call, just like we do with our clients when we're going through, a process to figure out if we're the right partner for them, I said, my question at the end of the call is, should we keep talking? Does it make sense for us to keep talking to figure out what the next step will be? And he said to me, I am so struck after speaking with you and Nick, how much it's obvious that you really care about your people. And I paused for a second because I said, that makes me really happy to know that that's evident, and also really sad that there are so many companies that don't care about people. I mean, literally, I was like, when you say that sentence out loud to me, I'm kind of a little mad. This is unusual that you've come across a company that cares about people. Like, it's when you see it in black and white, it's so hard to take on board as a fact.
It's funny that you say that because our team so kindly did a Women's Appreciation Month video for our leadership team. And the thing that struck me the most about that video was how many people said the leadership team talks the talk and walks the walk. What comes to mind when you say that?
A personal example where I felt that was not too long ago with you and I, and I'll preface this conversation by saying there is a calendar involved, and there's gold stars and red stars and silver stars involved. In the world we live in, when there's so many things happening in your life, personally, with relationships, with work, with family, like there's so much going on, and it only gets harder as you get older. That's what people keep telling me. Great. And I think it's really easy in a consulting role, especially coming from a Big Four consulting, to think that the hustle culture. We hear it all the time. Like, you have to be working as much as you can. You have to set yourself up for success. Like, the hours you work equate to success. And I think coming here, it rewrote that narrative for me. And thinking about not only talking about balance and the whole idea of work-life balance and prioritizing your mental health, what does that really look like from an action standpoint? And to shout out to Katie, I had an experience where I was really struggling with, what does balance mean to me? One, that's a high level thought. But then to that end, how do I actually action creating balance for myself? And I think some people would say oh, go for a walk, or do something like leave early. And now coming here, it's really no, let's actually take action that's going to have impact. So Katie over here bought me a calendar with stars. So basically, when you think about the balance at work, I think there's there's an opportunity to step away, right? There should be. And if there's not, then that's a discussion around like, what does your scope look like? What does your workload look like? How are you changing that to actually have an impact? But thinking about the stars in the calendar, for me, like, I really need to be able to step away at 5:00 or before 6, right? Like, that is the American work week, as we talk about. And I think just managing and asking myself, like, if I'm not stepping away, what is the reason? And that really goes back to like reflecting and having action associated with trying to solve that problem of work-life balance.
Did you get any gold stars this week?
I did. And I think the other part to this too that I think is so important to talk about is like there's accountability. Mm-hmm. There's accountability with Katie messaged me last night at 5:51. You logging off soon? And then asking like, if you're not, how are we going to solve that? Here at Omlie, one of the things that I appreciate so much is like we have our guiding principles, right? We have how we're going to work with each other, but they're consistently being revisited by the leadership team. It's not like set it and let it go. We had an instance earlier this year where the leadership team reflected on like, what does it mean to be on PTO and be disconnected from work? But to that end, like if people are violating that, how are we going to have an op model or like a ways of working around that solves the problem of violating you being connected, right? And this is where the violation GIF comes in around like, if you're on PTO and someone on the team needs to contact you, like it has to be by phone call. So you really need to think to yourself, a phone call is very different than a text, very different than an email. You have to think to yourself, is it that urgent that I need to call this person? And if the answer is no, you better not do it. And same goes for the people on PTO. Like you should not be online responding to Teams messages. So we have a violation GIF that we send to people when they do.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite part of the violation GIF, besides it being perfect for Nick, is how it came about. We did do an assessment of ourselves and the team of how, on a grade scale, how we were doing against our ways of working that we had set. And if we're not doing it well, then we shouldn't expect the rest of the team to do it well. And how do we reinforce it and put people in a good position? And so the leadership team actually went into it like pretty eagerly aggressive. And our suggestion was if somebody texts you or emails you when you're on PTO, your response is, I am on PTO and this is a violation of our ways of working. I will get back to you when I am back in the office.
Our intention was like, you can
say
no.
Yes. You should push back. You should tell people that it's a violation. And later that evening, actually, Haley, Lauren, and I were celebrating our Omlie anniversary with Erin. And Haley goes, can we talk about the text that we're supposed to send back? And we're like, yes, you're welcome. You are empowered. You should do that. And she was like, yeah, I don't really like it. Can we do a GIF instead? It's way more our vibe. And we were like, you're absolutely correct. I will text Zach and Haley right now and ask them to create a GIF with Nick. And then it was like Nick's shining GIF moment. She couldn't have been more excited about it. And it was just a wonderful example of like, yes, like we took something to the team to say like, this is something that we want to do to protect all of our time. And the team was like, that's amazing. Could we make it more our vibe?
Mm-hmm. Went a little too far.
Yeah, you're a little too. Can we get a little bit more parrot? We appreciated that. I mean, I loved that Haley spoke up and used her voice and said, we appreciate the intent. We'd like to soften it a little bit so it feels more comfortable for us to do the pushback. And that GIF has been flying around. My experience with the GIF so far has been giving it to the person on PTO as opposed to the PTO person having to give it to us, which is great because then it's like you kind of like fade into the bushes and go back to your PTO.
Yeah, I think that's what keeps a culture alive. One that everybody feels ownership of it. To say, how can we really make this more, cohesive with the rest of our energy? And also, how do we have community-based accountability? That, I think, makes it easier to not be like, oh, we're relying on one person to maintain the culture, but instead it's something we're all building and co-creating together.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. I think also an example that comes to mind when you think about like having a voice in something that I didn't know before you got here that you could have a voice in is around the expense policy is a really great example. Is Nick rolled out the expense policy for us, I think earlier last year. Mm-hmm. And to take a step back and almost say, like, instead of providing feedback on actually the provisions that exist on that, that's something separate. Absolutely. But having feed forward around, like, is this in our voice as Omlie? I thought was really fascinating too. That, like, I thought to myself during that meeting, oh, we could overlay an Omlie voice even into something like our policies, right? Like, I thought that was really cool as well.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah.
Let's talk about teams.
Okay.
So you were a collegiate athlete.
Yes.
Division I field hockey. Welcome to the club. Talk to me about what it means to be part of a team.
When I think about a team, the one headline that comes to mind is you rise and fall with the team.
Mm.
I know we say like team, not family, right? Like with family, sometimes you could be like, I'll let them fall, right? I'll let them fall for better or for worse, right? Like here, I don't feel that at all. Like with the team, like really, you feel the successes every week, frankly. You feel the successes and you also feel the failures.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's my favorite aspect in regards to like success and failure. But then also, like even when you're working on like an individual project, say with a client, I think where I feel really comfortable and empowered is the fact that everyone around me, like we were on a call with Jordan yesterday, when someone offers their help, they mean it.
Mm.
And again, I think people are so quick to offer and then flake or not show up to a meeting or not prioritize the time. Or here, like you really feel like you have 10 plus other people who will help you work through something, which I don't think a lot of people could say at other companies.
So I always get like a little bit like, oh, like cringy when people are like, oh, well, I just want to be somewhere where it's like family. I'm like, well, that is not here.
Yeah.
That is not any professional workplace because to your point, you could let your family fall. You're not usually coaching your family, though you might want to, though you might want to say like, ooh, not quite the best delivery, or ooh, could you show up maybe not with such energy like that and skunk on the table. So many of those things don't happen in family dynamics because we have very specific roles in our family dynamics. Whereas on teams, the opportunity is to grow together, succeed together, give that coaching. Like you really want that person to be the best version of themselves. And that journey of coaching is very different than you would have in a family dynamic.
100%. I also think about people have such diverse experiences here. Like I know a lot of people have come from a Big Four consulting firm, but even with that, you have so many different experiences. And also the cool part too that I think about Omlie is everybody also has really cool activities that they do outside of work, which I'm like
with their families,
which is okay. They can tell us about it, but we won't actually participate essentially, and that's okay.
Yeah,
people cannot grow and get better unless somebody's giving them feed forward. If they don't know that they're doing something like not exactly right, or if they can just amp something up that they're doing just a little bit more, how are they ever going to become the best version of themselves? And one of the things coming in that Sarah peppered my job description with coach because she knew that was like what I wanted to do. I want to, good account leads breed good account leads, good managers breed good managers. And so when you think about like how the team is going to experience getting coached and then translate that to coaching themselves, that creates like such a good line of coaches that now everybody kind of has the same experience and the same opportunities for growth. Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest frustrations that I've experienced in my career is either not getting feedback and so therefore flubbing, trying to figure out. I mean, your coach is telling you every day what you're doing wrong. Mm-hmm. Rarely is your coach being like, hey, you're amazing. Like it's usually like, hey, do this a little bit different, or did you notice this and can you do this, a different way or get to a different outcome. Whereas like if I'm not being coached, I can't become the best version of myself. And then if somebody else isn't being coached and they come to me for a project, now the problem is mine and the clients. And so having a very consistent coaching mentality from top to bottom creates such a better experience for everyone along the journey. And the angst of getting feed forward is different. You're looking for it. You're going to your coach and saying, how can I do differently? How did I do in that meeting? And so then it like eliminates some of that toxic environment of the negative feed forward or the negative feedback. It's like you're going to your coach and saying, okay, what can I do better next time? And I love that the team embraces that. I love that sitting down with somebody and giving them feed forward, which can be difficult, is embraced. And it's like, how do I do it better because of the way that we do it? And that is a team-based mentality.
Yeah. As a more junior person at Omlie, it's really powerful to look at a team and like have people to look up to and say, that's a job I want one day. I haven't always been in that position where I looked at people who are more senior or in leadership positions and I'm like, I don't want their job. So I do think it's powerful to say like, yes, we have this coaching mentality from top to bottom, but then you also have something to strive for and solicit, like having that feed forward. There's an end goal at it if you want it.
That's why we had the whole conversation about work-life balance as a leadership team, because we're like, if we can't emulate this and we're not doing a good job at it, then we're setting an example that is not the one we're intending to set.
Right.
And that's a problem. And so how do we course correct? And we're constantly doing that because for the same reason, like we want to be looking up to each other and the full team, like looking at you and thinking, wow, I should get a calendar and some stars for myself. Like I think there are elements of we're always looking to learn from each other. And that to me is a sign of a great team, that you don't just have one star who everybody's like living in their shadow, but instead you're all sharpening each other and getting better and stronger from that learning.
Billy sent me a meme the other day that was, in essence, like the good teams are the ones you can hear. They're the ones that are always talking, always giving feedback, always looking to improve, always doing something different. It's when it gets quiet that you got to be concerned.
One of my cousins had been promoted to a people manager, and she said to me, how do I be a good manager? Like, what do I need to do? What do I need to think about? And I said, well, that's an easy question. Being a good manager is not hard. Just don't be a jerk. But if you want to be a great leader, you have to study it. You have to work at it. You have to practice. You have to take accountability and apologize when you've done it wrong. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've been in so many conversations where I've tried to share feed forward with someone and maybe I flubbed the way I'm talking about it. And I've gone back and said, I'm really sorry. My delivery was way off. The content of what I was trying to say still had the right intention and description, but like I didn't do a good job coming to the table for you to be able to hear it and work through it. That level of accountability to me is so important. Most unfortunately, some of the best teachers for me have been bad leaders because they are examples of how I never want people to feel in my presence. I never want teams to be in fear of saying when they don't know something. So I'm the first to say when I don't know something or when I've made a mistake. And that unfortunately comes largely from bad leaders, but the good leaders are relatively easy to study because there aren't that many too.
Maria, as we wrap up this wonderful session with you, can you please talk to us about your pioneer? Who did you choose and why?
Yes, absolutely. So thinking about what we talked about today, a lot of it was around team dynamics. And ultimately, as we talked about, I played a sport in college. I played Division I field hockey. And something that I think about a lot is, number one, obviously, like sports are important and teach you a lot, but also women in sports is so incredible. I mean, even thinking about what's happening today.
Yes.
Caitlin Clark, I mean, I have to shout that out. I think it's what she is doing for the sport is she is elevating everybody up within the WNBA. And I think tying back to who my pioneer is, Serena Williams. For those of you who don't know, Serena is an incredible, incredible tennis player, now retired, but she's so much more than that. I think as I think about why I chose her, it's really that she didn't only have an impact on her sports with women and minorities. She really took the sport and did so much more with her accomplishments, right? She's into philanthropy. She is a proud mother and talks about that openly and honestly, and I think that's incredible. And she also puts her family first and puts that on center stage too. So I think one of the reasons why I chose her is she obviously is incredible at her sport and represents so much, but also her ability to elevate the sport and women specifically in that.
And she was the first athlete to play pregnant, correct?
Yeah, first pregnant woman to win a Grand Slam. It's incredible.
It's a very niche accomplishment.
Yeah.
I thought it was so amazing for Dawn Staley to stand up and say Caitlin Clark gets all the credit for, helping to elevate this sport. It's a different feel of the women athletes and the women leadership in athletics, and watching it span out into other sports. So we've got women managers in the major leagues, like it's coaches in the NBA, referees in the NFL. So it's really, really quite amazing to see the impact that Serena and others have had on women in sports.
100%.
Thank you so much for being with us today, Maria. It's been really awesome to hear your voice, your perspective, why you came to the Omlie team, and how you're making us a better team every day that you're here.